Okay, welcome to the Chelation chat, and I'm Steve Fowkes, and I'm hosting it, and this will be recorded and posted. Anybody who wants a copy of it for their own posting, let me know, and I'll be glad to provide it. Anybody want to start off and ask a question? All right.
Hey, hello there, Stephen. This is Andre. First of all, I wanted to thank you for this opportunity for sharing your knowledge and time with us. I do have a question that pertains to OSR. So one of the, I see this as an ongoing debate on the OSR groups. And one that, I have my own particular views, but I wanted to check with you, what's your perspective on this particular topic. It is in regards to OSR creating redistribution. For example, in a situation such as it binds initially to lead, and then it bumps into mercury, and because of the so-called higher affinity towards mercury, it would drop the lead, and therefore creating an opportunity for redistribution.
Yes, and it redistributes calcium, it redistributes transition metals like iron, copper, and zinc. That's just one of the things that happens when you're doing chelation, and it's pretty much universal. All chelating agents do this. There's an exchange reaction. And usually with something like EDTA, rather than infusing it in its raw form where it's going to cause maximum redistribution, the EDTA is delivered as, let's say, a magnesium chelate or a calcium chelate, so that it's not stealing your magnesium or calcium in the process. But amerimide doesn't come preloaded with anything. You could potentially try mixing it with something like zinc to bind to the amerimide, so that it wouldn't deplete your body of zinc. But I just don't know whether or not the amerimide zinc complex would be absorbable. So I wouldn't suggest that people try that. But, it can also it can absorb something on the way in, just diffuse into your deep tissues, and then do an exchange reaction. And because mercury's native level is deep in the subcellular compartments of the body, there is always the possibility that something will be carried from the cytoplasm into the nucleus and the mitochondria and other organelles. So this is part of the process that people can speculate about why they necessarily feel bad when they do amerimide, some kind of Herxheimer reaction, and where is that coming from and how it might be mitigated. They're good questions to ask. Don't be shy. Angela? Can you see?
Okay.
There you go.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
So we can ask the questions only about OSR, or also the other questions which goes alongside with chelation, like, for example, some enzymes or some digestion issues.
I offered to talk about things like senility syndromes and Alzheimer's disease. So I don't mind answering questions about other topics, because a lot of this relates. I've just been writing an article for the Index Scientific Literature on Alzheimer's disease, and the general mechanism is that the sulfur pool, the glutathione pool, and the sulfur-based enzymes and selenol-based enzymes with selenium become inhibited. But this happens throughout the entire body. When it happens on the far side of the blood-brain barrier, we call it Alzheimer's disease. But if it happens in your kidneys, we call it kidney failure. If it happens in your heart, it's heart failure. So, you have liver toxicity issues that manifest this way. So these are general mechanisms that manifest in specific ways in different tissues. And the metalopathy of Alzheimer's disease is basically the same thing that happens when you get heavy metal poisoned.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
if mercury leaks from your tissues into your cellular compartment, or you're absorbing it, and there's not enough glutathione to bind it. Think of glutathione as a sponge, a mercury sponge or a heavy metal sponge. And it's this big, massive tool that's between 1 and 10 millimolar. So it's massive quantities of glutathione around, and this tiny amount of mercury that's bound to the sulfur atoms. And 99.99% of your mercury is bound to sulfur atoms. And where those sulfur atoms are, the mercury doesn't care. It'll bind to sulfur atoms whenever it runs into it. But the mercury slowly moves around because this sulfur atom bumps into it and pulls it off of another sulfur atom. So there's this diffusion that takes place where mercury, if it's diluted enough by the glutathione pool, you basically are asymptomatic. And so the question of, how does low-level mercury toxicity manifest? That's a different kind of a question that nobody's really addressing. But high levels, the mercury leaks off of your glutathione and it attaches to sulfur atoms on enzymes and on structural proteins. And there's a special affinity for selenium. So all of those enzymes, the antioxidant enzymes that use selenium, they're like a mercury magnet. They have 1 million times more affinity for that mercury than the glutathione does. And
Wow.
so that's part of this issue of what happens when your selenium becomes depleted. Well, there's all kinds of issues relating to, for example, autoimmunity, immune system dysfunctions, oxidative stress, and that metalopathy of having something like zinc, which is normally a nutritional mineral. Well, it can become toxic when you enter this metalopathy state.
Wow, thank you. Actually, I didn't expect that you will explain this part of how our enzymes are working. My question was about specifically pancreatic enzymes, which I take with every meal because I have some ammonia issues with that. And my question was, how can I address ammonia, because I can't tolerate vegetarian enzymes, and I also can't tolerate food without enzymes at all, because
Well, your
it makes me.
gallbladder may be compromised, and
Yeah,
so
I also used supplements to address my gallbladder. So I use, do you know Tutka?
no.
Tutka? No, Ursodiol.
Aaron, if it looks like you wanting to pop in and say something. So if you have something to add to this, please do so. The whole issue of which system is compromised in particular individuals is important for all of us to understand, to be making wise decisions about our health. And I've studied my health. Now, I'm probably rare in this group of having an interest in mercury chelation that isn't from a personal experience. I mean, I did play with mercury when I was a kid and all, but I'm fortunate. I've got good genes and it was never really an issue. And so if I have mercury toxicity, it's well hidden and I'm largely asymptomatic. So, I'm in this just because of my curiosity. But I know that I have an upper respiratory sensitivity. My constitution means that I suffer when I catch a cold or a flu, and my sinuses are the last part of me and my lungs are the last part of me to heal. That allows me to make better decisions. It allows me to recognize if I'm breathing some dust or some mold, that I can start to react to it and go, oh, okay, I've got to do something about this. So if for you, it's your gallbladder and fat absorption issues, then it's like you need to work that out and figure out what your adaptations and compensations are going to be to live a healthy life. So this is a good question to ask because it's relevant to you. But let me point out that there is a problem with ammonia and with glutamine. And a lot of people are recommended to take glutamine, and that's got 2 ammonia molecules in it. And that means that when you break down the glutamine for energy, you've got to get rid of 2 ammonia molecules. Well, MSG has 1 ammonia molecule on it, but it's excitotoxic, and a lot of people can't tolerate MSG. But there's a compound called alpha ketoglutarate, which has 0 ammonia molecules on it. It's the same energy substrate, the same backbone as glutamate and glutamine, but it has no ammonia.
Can I chime in?
Yes.
Sorry, I've just woken up, so I'm like, yeah, here in Australia, it's really early. Same with Aaron, he's got it at 9, but I literally just got out of bed and I've just hopped on. Angela, what I've found for ammonia, and I'd like Aaron to chime in because he's probably knows a lot as well, is that I've found a lot of info on Torb Becker's page. Literally, she is a wealth of information. I would just search ammonia on her page or really anything. And she has a lot to go on. Lining exactly with what Stephen said, AKG is really big. I know a lot of gut practitioners in this space because ammonia is huge in the gut. So certainly when there's gram-negative dysbiosis, and that seems to be a really common factor for us with mercury toxicity. I don't know why, but ammonia production is huge. And a lot of different gut supplements, they throw in AKG, they throw in larch fiber, they throw in the 3 aminos, which is basically like a cycle in the urea cycle. So arginine, ornithine, and citrulline. And now obviously arginine depletes your body of lysine, so it's up to you whether you want to use that a lot, and sort of try and balance that out if you've got like some sort of viral issue going on.
And that's a common thing that happens in anybody with heavy metal poisoning, because those heavy metals tend to poison the energy metabolism of the body, and the energy metabolism of the body generates acid. And so that lack of acid generation makes people alkaline stressed, and bacteria and viruses are opportunistic to look for hypometabolic individuals. So if you have a low body temperature, low pulse rate, cold hands and feet, all of those kinds of symptoms, that means your constitutional susceptibility for infection is probably viruses and bacteria.
Yeah, certainly.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, Angela.
Yeah, I was just about to confirm what Steve said, that I'm really susceptible for viruses and bacteria right now. I have the SIBA activated so much during 10 months. It was since I couldn't tolerate OSR anymore. And I'm trying to address SIBA right now to reduce inflammation. And
I have a suggestion for you.
Yeah.
I've developed a product recently, and my conflict of interest with it is that my brother sells it. So that's a familial conflict of interest. I don't get any money or royalties from it. As a matter of fact, I'm paying people to try it out. So if anybody has any kind of gut-related symptom, I'm interested in trying this. And this is a charcoal zinc combination. And the reason I mention it is because the tight junction gaps in the gut that keep the gut sealed up, so that the food particles and bacteria and bacteriophages and fungus and all that's on the inside the gut doesn't pass through the wall of the intestine and the colon to then irritate your immune system. And amaramide, because it's sulfur based, has this affinity for zinc. And so this idea that of redistribution, where zinc is one of those things that could be most likely to be redistributed when the zinc is being swallowed, it's passing down the gut, It's going to absorb something before it goes systemic in the body. And if it does absorb through the wall of the gut, it could chelate zinc before it chelates anything else. So if you have a type 2 zinc deficiency where there's not enough zinc in the blood to feed the colonocytes in the intestinal lining, then it could be that the emeramide may make your gut worse. And this particular product is like a timed release zinc, where it's not all absorbed in the upper intestine, and the zinc, rides the charcoal all the way down the bowel and leaks out to feed the colonocytes, the distal intestine and the colon. And you might want to see whether that changes your response to emeramide.
Actually, I would like, and I open to try everything new, because I'm like, I feel like I'm trapped because I can't address SIBO, although I'm on a very strict diet. I'm on GAPS, and I'm just on 5 products daily. I'm eating just 2 times a day. I using enzymes and a lot of things to battle SIBO, but it's working. It's barely working. And I wonder why the other people have a lot of success with such things I do, but I'm not.
Well,
And
first of all, let me say, measuring your success against other people's is intrinsically a mistake. Everybody is biochemically unique, everybody's nutritionally unique, everybody's epigenetically unique. And so the problem that everybody has is figuring out what your bottlenecks are. And that's not a simple thing. There's 100 different things that could be going wrong. It could be limiting factors. So for example, let's say you have leaky gut syndrome, and this is manifesting with inflammation in your distal intestine, and you have SIBO. Okay, so you have bacterial overgrowth from the bacteria in the colon that are invading the lower end of your intestine. Well, part of that happens because there's local inflammation in the intestine, and the ability of the intestine to heal is compromised by that inflammation. So think of inflammation as a teeter-totter. If you're inflamed, you're not healing. And deferred healing means that your gut is going to deteriorate, and the zinc fingers that are tightening your junction gaps, those are going to become looser and looser the longer the inflammation goes. And so the point is that inflammation defers healing. So that's a general mechanism that everybody should know about. Inflammation defers healing. And this is part of how our immune systems work. During an infection, you have this high level of inflammation. Healing is job number 2. Number 1 is getting rid of the infection. And so if that goes for 2 days, it's no big deal. Not healing for 2 days is not a problem. Goes for 2 weeks, well, that's maybe a little bit of a problem, but 2 months and 2 years, that's a big deal. You don't want to defer healing for that length of time. But that's what everybody's doing in this day and age of inflammation. We're having a wholesale downregulation of our healing abilities. So each person's challenge is to figure out, what is it for me that's deferring my healing, that's causing my inflammation?
yeah, thank you so much. It's very impressive. It's just, I thought about, I can't tolerate zinc. When I'm trying to supplement orally zinc in different kind of forms, I tried, it gives me a lot of bloating and a lot of pain in my intestines. And I have read from Aaron posts from Aaron comments in Facebook group that zinc feeds bacteria. Is that correct? Yeah. So yeah. I wonder if that
iron, zinc, and copper and tryptophan are all growth factors for microbes. But feeding a microbe isn't necessarily bad if that microbe is not dominating your microbiome. If you've got a pathological strain that's growing off the zinc. So it could be that you've got a zinc and a copper deficiency. And so when you take zinc, you're fixing your zinc deficiency, but aggravating your copper deficiency. So there's a whole nested layer of these kinds of things that may be involved. And And also, zinc is astringent. It's an irritant to the stomach and the intestine. So if your intestine isn't making enough mucus, the zinc will irritate your tissues.
Before my 10 months ago, I got worse because I tried to address methylation, and it brings me a lot of inflammation. I wonder if my detox was too speedy for my system. Maybe this caused a lot of inflammation afterwards. But before this moment, I could tolerate zinc very easy. I even experienced more energy when I took it, although I couldn't tolerate copper. So yeah, I understand that I need to balance between those three: zinc, copper, and molybdenum. I just
Let me interrupt you for a second here to say that there's a difference between how people respond to zinc if you're in a state of metallopathy versus not in a state of metallopathy. So once your antioxidant defense system crashes, zinc broadens its effect from a nutritional support element into a irritant and a toxicant. And so this is, Boyd Haley measured this in a series of experiments that he did looking at the inhibition of beta tubulin by mercury, and he found that zinc aggravated the toxicity of mercury. And at the lowest levels of mercury, that aggravation was serious. And so it may be that you need to do a lower dose. And so this idea of providing low doses of zinc with a charcoal release may keep that zinc concentration down to a low enough level that you can get the therapeutic benefit without the irritation. So anybody who wants to try this product, put your, either call me up, or send me an email with your name and mailing address, the street address for delivery of product, or write it in the chat. I'm going to save the chat. And if you write in your name and address in the chat and say zinc product, or it's called Susta Zinc, SUSTA capital ZN, and I'll have a bottle drop shipped to you. Okay. And all I want in return is a report from you on what it does for your gastrointestinal symptoms.
Yeah, I would like. Thank you so much. I will chat you.
Good. Debbie, did you want to talk up? Did you want to say something? Okay.
Oh, manganese is a cofactor. So something else to keep in mind is manganese is needed for ammonia excretion. So sometimes that can be a missing cofactor as well. And that can also feed bacterial infections.
And
Oh,
it's something that amaramide might bind on the way in.
Yeah. But Angela, at the moment, you're struggling with OSR, aren't you?
Well,
Yep.
I think she said
She needs to, like you said, she needs to get the inflammation down and get herself to a point where she can actually tolerate OSR.
100%.
Yeah, and the other thing to consider is that it may be better to avoid oral use. Many people have transitioned from oral use to transdermal use, and their response has dramatically changed. So you could mix some OSR with oil and rub it on the sole of your foot or on your ankle. You could mix it with DMSO and apply it to a thin-skinned area and test your sensitivity to it, drop by drop, to see if it's a different reaction when it's done transdermally.
Thank you.
Okay, I've muted Angela, so who's next? Aaron, did you have a comment to make, or was that it?
Oh, I think, has Angela tried You've tried butyrate, haven't you, Angela? I think Angela. So I've worked with Angela quite a bit, and she's there's a lot of things that she's tried. So, but it sounds like the ammonia is one of your biggest issues. That's right, isn't it, Angela? Well, you're not sure.
Yeah.
Oh, you're muted, Angela. She's muted.
Do you hear me right now?
Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Thank you. It's ammonia is my main issue. Yes, in main parts of reactions and supplements, especially on pancreatine and probiotics, even like spore probiotic or Saccharomyces boulardii. I'm not sure how to pronounce it correct, but I think you understand me. Yeah, they cause me a lot of ammonia. Oh, sorry, the kids. And so I stopped all probiotics, and I can't stop pancreatine because if I do not use any enzymes with my food, I feel low energy and I can't even stand up. I just after meal I just go to sleep, and I can't sleep because of my arrhythmia after the food, and I can't also stand up and do something because I'm low energy. But when I take pancreatine, I have energy, but I feel ammonia smell from my armpits from my mouth, and I'm trying to I also feel those sweetie. I'm started to feel sweet, not sweet. I'm not sure how to speak in English. Okay, yeah. When the water comes out of your body, that's sweet.
Sweat.
Yes.
Sweating. Yes, sweating.
Sweating.
Yes.
Okay.
So that can be a stress response, or that can be an immune response. So sweating can actually tell you a lot about what your body's doing for some people. So if they get in a very stressful situation, they'll break out in a sweat. And so that's an autonomic stress response. Or if you've got fever, you'll run a really high temperature because your body's upregulating your metabolism to fight infection. So sweating can tell you a lot about what your body's doing. But when
it's also a correlate with adrenal responses to low thyroid. So this is another aspect that your metabolic rate is regulated by two top-down systems, and the thyroid hormone, if it's inadequate, can result in stress to your adrenal gland, and your adrenal gland can then become unstable. And if it collapses, then you end up with a severe fatigue and lack of energy and stuff like that. And so if you can see whether or not something like cortisone or hydrocortisone it helps restore your energy during those fatigue times, just see if maybe that's what's going on. And you can also test your adrenal gland to see if it's maybe weak. And so there are ways that you can look into that. But there's also feeding your adrenal gland with things like pregnenolone, or there's also some herbs that are adaptogens that are designed to help the adrenal gland. I haven't found that most of the people in a state of adrenal fatigue, though, respond positively to them. But
thank you so much. Yeah, excuse me, you haven't finished. You go ahead.
No, I think that was basically done. So that issue of adrenal involvement also tends to manifest with subjective symptoms that you may be familiar with. Nervousness, anxiety, fear, phobias, panic attacks. There's a kind of edginess to life when it's being run by your adrenal gland.
Thank you so much for all of this list. The funny thing is that all of them just all of them I've already tried. Pregnenolone, hydrocortisone, thyroid and NDT, natural desiccated thyroid. I did a lot of testing. I tried adrenal cortex. I tried all adaptogens I could buy here. And all of them, that's so disappointing. They make me worse. And I feel, that's my feeling, that all the problems are from my gut. I mean, my main problems of ammonia, lack of energy, and everything. Yeah, of course, I understand that it's connected all, and what I eat and what I take directly influence on my thyroid, and thyroid levels influence on my gut health and everything. But I feel like the tail on which I can catch is not the thyroid or adrenal or something. I feel like I need to treat my digestive first, and that would be the step forward. But I'm not sure how to do it. I've started several months ago liver flushes, the short version, and it gave me benefits. And I feel like when I go strictly on my diet, of course, it helps me to control more symptoms. So I connected that all of these ammonia symptoms and everything, it goes directly from my gut. And that's why I'm focused right now on the gut healing. But I'm not sure. It feels like I tried everything already for gut. I tried aloe vera, like I bought the whole juice, aloe vera leaf, and then cut and eat it before every food, 30 minutes. And then I tried all kind of probiotics. I tried oregano oil and the other, those, Aaron, you recommend me SF722, those
722, yeah.
androgenic acid.
Well, it's called unilic acid now.
Yeah, that was the worst, by the way, for me. I couldn't handle it because after that there were massive adrenal issues after that. So
Yeah.
die-off reactions, I can't handle it. I can handle liver flushes, but I can't handle this androgenic acid.
So that's actually a good thing, Angela, in terms of, so unilic acid, for people that feel unilic acid, they've all got candida, and you've got to treat it like chelation. So you might do one every third day, and then you do one every second day, and then you see if you can do one every day, and then you slowly work up to 5 3 times a day, or some people do 10 3 times a day. And unilic acid works very well in treating colonized mold as well. So what you're struggling with, just listening to you, you need the digestive enzymes because digestion requires energy. So what happens is when your body doesn't make energy, your gut borrows acid out of your bloodstream that comes from cellular energy all around your body. So that our kidneys defend our blood pH between 7.35 and 7.45. But our kidneys dump either net acid or net alkalinity into our urine to maintain that constant level of blood pH. So what happens is when you eat food, your gut will borrow acid that comes from energy metabolism. And then, so if you don't take digestive enzymes with your meal, the digestive enzymes help to break down your food. But if you don't take digestive enzymes, your stomach and pancreas, the cells in your stomach and your pancreatic cells don't generate enough digestive enzymes, and your body, there's an adaptation mechanism in your body that uses acid from around your body to digest your food, and that crashes you. So that's why digestive enzymes help you so much. So, and with what I find a lot of, especially with women, a lot of women have yeast issues. And if you pay attention to your menstrual cycle, what happens is from day 0 to day 12, estrogen slowly increases to day 12, It peaks on day 12, and then about day 14, progesterone kicks in. And for a lot of women like yourself, and that your menstrual cycle may tell you a lot about your metabolism. So if we look at your body, and this hand's homeostasis. Now you're out here, you're hypometabolic, you're over alkaline at a cellular level. So if you don't take digestive enzymes, for example, it crashes your metabolism. So you go more alkaline or more hypometabolic, which crashes your antioxidant defenses. So the main two antioxidant defenses that are very important or critical is glutathione inside the cell, vitamin C outside the cell. And the further hypometabolic or the further alkaline you go, the more your immune system turns on, the more inflammation increases in your body. So as you lose antioxidant defense, which is recycling of vitamin C and glutathione, and to a lesser degree synthesis of glutathione, the more your immune system turns on. So you get stuck in this chronic state of inflammation. So digestive enzymes is one thing that helps you shift metabolism this way without causing any negative reactions. You'll find if you can chip away with SF722, it will help to balance the yeast bacteria ratio in your gut. So the main reason that people feel unilic acid is because they've got a candida problem. Exactly the same with OSR. The people that feel OSR have got a heavy metal problem. And the more hypometabolic they are, the harder OSR becomes. And this is probably why you were tolerating OSR, but now you're not, because as you chelate, and if you don't keep control of inflammation, if you're shifting further and further this way, and becoming more hypometabolic, your immune system becomes more reactive, OSR becomes much harder to the point where you can no longer take it. So if we go back,
there's another aspect of this too, and that is that there is an emergency response to alkaline stress. In the early stages of the alkalinization of your bloodstream from, let's say, eating, and you get kind of sleepy and groggy and you feel like you want to take a nap, but you can't necessarily go to sleep. You just become kind of like lie down and just, stop doing everything. But there is a point at which that alkaline stress will trigger an inflammatory counter reaction involving prostaglandins, which are inflammatory hormone responses that would normally be induced by a fever, but are induced because your body is too alkaline and they create an acid tide. And what that means is that at some point with that, you become inflammatory and all of a sudden your energy improves because your blood has been acidified, but that again is in impairing healing processes. So it's an emergency kind of acidification and it's not a healthy acidification.
Could I chime in?
Yeah.
Sorry. And I've been exactly where you are with the SIBO and the dysbiosis. I'll give you my N=1, but post-prandial, I was basically comatose when I really had bad SIBO. So frankly, definitely just feeling groggy, fatigue, basically heavy muscles. It's these metabolites that SIBO bacteria produce, so D-lactic acid and ammonia, and you're certainly dealing with ammonia issues because it's coming out of your skin, for one, and the burps and so the gas out of your breath, it's all really evident. And that's coming from the small intestine where all these guys are burrowed. And now SIBO, it's a complex disorder, but it doesn't just happen to healthy people. The root cause of which I throw in the chat, it's due to poor digestion. And now, so you look at, there's a few different pillars to good digestion. I won't get into it all, but you look at your root causes and you don't have to look at why you wound up here. But if you just start supporting your digestion ongoing, which a lot of it is ATP dependent, certainly motility, and all your minerals and vitamins are involved. So you need to be eating good nutrition to run your digestive capacity, to digest your food well, so it won't linger and stagnate in your small intestine to encourage SIBO in the first place. To me, it sounds like you're having a really hard time with SIBO and with ammonia, and it is backing up and causing you issues in your liver. And of course, sensitivities will become an issue from there because you're really inflamed and you're not detoxing. I've even found that estrogen issues are directly a result of dysbiosis in myself. My CFS has improved by treating my SIBO and my dysbiosis, and that's allowed me to tolerate other things as well. Even simply butyrate production, which you can supplement, but it works best endogenously. Once you get that back online, that is the main fuel for your gut lining. And once you've got butyrate running, you start to feel a whole lot better in and of itself. I would probably try and find a practitioner that is savvy in treating SIBO and dysbiosis, and just that one pillar alone of SIBO and dysbiosis, keep ammonia there and start to work through that just as it is. Consider that the metals and everything are driving your SIBO and dysbiosis, but I don't think you need to get complex. I think you're suffering, and I don't want you to be, getting hit with ammonia in your brain, because it's really, really toxic to the cells. And so is hydrogen sulfide, which I wager you're probably dealing with as well, because a lot of these bacteria produce it. But yeah, for me, the postprandial issues, just eating, was definitely the SIBO and the dysbiosis, for sure.
Thank you so much. Let me address Aaron's comment.
We got two other people with hands up, so let's move on.
Sorry.
Angela, feel free to raise your hand and join the conversation later, and with any questions that you have. But I'd like to move on. Mona.
Howdy. So I'm trying to get a better understanding from a bigger picture of how mercury or other toxicities affect enzymes, enzyme functionality. My understanding is that they can interfere with various enzymes in different ways, both in terms of toxicity and also in terms of interfering with nutrients that the enzymes are dependent on.
That's what I'm reviewing right now. Yeah, good question.
Yeah, so I would love to hear more about what the big picture tree diagram is in terms of how you view that aspect.
Well,
and also, my understanding is that supplementing with exogenous enzymes does not downregulate innate system enzyme production, and I'd love to hear your opinion on that too.
I think it can, but I don't think it does for most people, because you're only slightly supporting the digestive process, and it's still inadequate. So you don't get a negative feedback loop that's significantly strong. But let me point out that there's an enzyme inhibition problem that happens from the loss of glutathione and the loss of selenium, reduced selenium, which would be selenols. And so mercury is bound by glutathione, but it leaks. And as glutathione pool becomes more and more oxidized and it shrinks, you get more and more mercury leaking. It's going to move to sulfur enzymes, and it's going to move to selenium enzymes and inhibit them. However, there's a key enzyme in the human body that isn't inhibited by mercury, but it's inhibited by oxidative stress at levels way below what mercury takes to inhibit enzymes. And that's the enzyme that's involved in vitamin B12. Cobalamin. It's got a cobalt atom in the center, and this cobalt atom is either +1, +2, or +3. +1 is the reduced form, +2 is the intermediate form, +3 is the oxidized form. So the body needs cobalt in its one state in order to methylate. So if you have plenty of vitamin B12 in your body, but your body is oxidized, you can't methylate things. And it doesn't matter how much B12 you take, it won't solve the problem. It's a functional inhibition of vitamin B12 activity, not a quantitative inhibition of it. It could be quantitative, in which case supplementing B12 makes a big difference for people. But you can have plenty of B12 on board and still be unable to methylate things because of this oxidation of this cobalt atom. Inside of mitochondria, the B12 coenzyme is used for a different purpose, And that requires it to be in its +3 state. And so the mitochondria is more oxidized than the cytoplasm of the cell. So this, you can have a functional B12 deficiency, and that shows up on organic acids test. Methylmalonate.
It's interesting you say that, Stephen, because I've seen this for years. People with high B12, high methylmalonic acid, high serum B12, and you chelate enough with OSR, that'll often the people become B12 deficient because they're not taking B12. So like,
Because they're told that their B12 is high, so they don't need to take it.
yeah. I always tell people to just keep taking B12. It doesn't matter how high it is.
It's not
Unless
so
you don't
expensive
tolerate it.
that it's worth trying to save pennies to not take it. And so if and when you do turn around the oxidation of the B12 so that your B12 starts to work, then you actually get the benefit from it because there's still plenty of B12 on board. So I'm just saying that this is a universal aspect of human beings, is that our B12 gets oxidized as we age. And so we have about 50% of the B12. A normal healthy child or teenager has a certain level of functionality of B12. And when we're middle-aged, we have half. And when we're 90 or when we're 70 years of age, we have half again, or even worse than that. So it can get down, I think the average for 60 to 80-year-olds was 8% of the B12 activity that a teen would have. So this is a fairly universal problem, and it's not mercury that's interfering with the oxidation of the cobalt atom. So that's an example of an enzyme inhibition that's feeding the sulfur from your methionine pool, which is doing, for example, methylation reactions in your body. And that includes the stability of your DNA, methylating your DNA and making various neurotransmitters. I mean, many things that methylation does. It's diverting that methylation capacity into making glutathione. And so that's the remedy for oxidative stress. Takes out your B12, you divert your sulfur into glutathione. That hopefully restores your redox buffering capacity. But if it doesn't, you're stuck with this chronic B12 dysfunction. So that's a big enzyme issue that everybody deals with, even if you don't have mercury on board. In terms of the specifics of what mercury does to your enzymes, there's a lot of enzymes that are sabotaged by mercury. So not only does your glutathione become weak, but there's the brain microtubules in your brain get inhibited, and the microtubules in your kidneys get inhibited. So, you know, kidney toxicity, kidney failure can be related to mercury. There's a energy molecule in your body called creatine phosphate, and there's an enzyme that converts ATP into creatine phosphate when ATP is plentiful, and the mercury inhibition of it prevents that and prevents it from back converting. So you lose half of your backup energy supply when mercury gets toxic and starts inhibiting enzymes.
A lot of people.
There's a glutamine synthetase that is that converts glutamate, which is excitotoxic, into glutamine. So it's consuming some ammonia that gets inhibited. So you can have glutamate buildup, which is then it manifests as excitotoxicity, which is a metallopathy-like condition that you can say the metal in that case is calcium.
And by the way, Robert Lustig says that fructose similarly interferes with that enzyme converting glutamine into GABA.
Glutamine into glutamine into.
Oh, sorry.
MSG, glutamate into glutamine.
Glutamate into GABA, so that if you are eating fructose, it interferes with that conversion causing the glutamate to build up and not convert into GABA.
Okay.
The,
So I think that,
the mineral transport on a hair test, for me, like that, it amazes me how accurate those hair tests are. Because what I've noticed is a lot of people, they'll do, say, mineral balancing for 5 or 10 years, and they'll have almost the same pattern on a hair test for 5 or 10 years. And then they start chelating, and a lot of the time, the mineral transport, just the mineral patterns on the hair test will wildly change. And then if the person perseveres with chelation, there's definite patterns where the mineral transport tightens up, and it tightens up into the green bands. And so when you look at a hair test, all a hair test is the hair test company's just taken a large group of supposedly healthy people, but we don't even fully know what healthy is. And they've hair tested them, and then they've set the reference ranges for on the hair tests. And those reference ranges are the green bands, what your minerals regulating within the white and green bands, or the acceptable reference range. And the hair tests do seem to regulate fairly evenly to the center line of the to the hair test, so left and right to the center line. What I noticed is as people chelate, often that mineral transport will be wildly dysregulated, and you can supplement as many minerals and vitamins as you want if your hair test, if the minerals are low on your hair test, and often it makes no difference until you get enough metals out. And all that tells me is that gives me a good idea that protein function and enzyme activity is dysregulated or blocked. And as the metals come out, that seems to resolve, and the mineral transport on your hair test starts to regulate quite tightly within the green bands. And mineral transport seems to normalize before the metals are out as well. So you can still have plenty of metal in your body, but you can have normal mineral transport. So then that's where you need to start looking deeper with things like your Orange Challenge tests, and also you've got to keep in mind the chelators that you're using, if they're intracellular chelators or extracellular chelators. If you're using extracellular chelators to look for intracellular metals, it's not going to give you an accurate reading. So you've got to make sure that wherever you're looking for metals, you use the right chelating agent to be able to see if you have still got metals in your body. I think the hair test is a really good way to see what's happening with enzyme function or enzyme activity in terms of how it's blocked and if it's changing with chelation.
Mona, is that an answer to your question, or did it raise another question?
That's helpful. One offshoot question is, I've been wondering about the role of superoxide dismutase.
Well, SOD is a specific oxidant for the cobalt atom on B12. So that it appears to have a high selectivity for superoxide. So if your superoxide is high, that will show up as an inhibition of B12 and a rise in methylmalonic acid on your organic acids test. So that's one particular way you can deal with that. But also, I mean, superoxide is necessary in a variety of ways for making different, for various catalytic reactions in the body. So it's not that you don't want to have superoxide in your body, it just needs to be regulated properly. Superoxide also reacts with nitric oxide. So these are both free radical signaling molecules that that can combine to form peroxynitrite, which is a fairly strong reactive oxygen species.
Yeah, so I was wondering about taking an enzyme to try and push on that particular gas pedal and see if that is it.
Yeah, one way that you can consider this is to look at your subjective reaction to exposure to negative ions. So do you feel better when you're in the shower? Do you feel better when it's raining? Sometimes the lack of air pressure during a storm system that's bringing in the rain will be a bigger impact on you than the superoxide, but you can easily do a shower. You can just, run the shower with cold water, and just breathe it in, just hang out in the bathroom with the shower running and to see, does it make you feel better? Or going out and turning on the sprinkler systems on your lawn, if you still have a lawn, and does that feel better? Or if you visit a waterfall or a water feature in a park or something like that, do you feel better in the vicinity of it? Especially if you're downwind of the water feature. And it could just be that you've got nitric oxide signaling that's dominating your superoxide, and inhibiting its ability to do its metabolic job.
Interesting. Thanks. I don't have any particular symptoms related to that. I have other symptoms that are, not non-troubling, but so I was just looking to see ways to get down oxidation and visual symptoms that indicate potential B12 deficiency. So that's how it factors in.
Well, visual is, you have to, to some extent, your eyes are a window into your brain, because the retina is a very energy intense tissue. It's an extension of your brain. It's basically incredibly packed with neurons and responds to needs for vitamin A and antioxidant protection. But from a thematic point of view, your question about enzyme inhibition comes down to the status of glutathione defending your sulfhydryl oxidant systems and your antioxidant systems, and selenol. So selenium becomes one of those key things that gets depleted. So when your enzymes are being inhibited, well, that's attacking not only sulfur enzymes, but selenium enzymes, and the selenium incorporation into those enzymes becomes under attack. And this is a kludge in animal biology. It's like there's these essential amino acids that our body makes proteins, but at some point after we developed that system, animals started using selenium, and they have this really complicated and convoluted way of doing it that poses all kinds of utilization and toxicity problems. So we take something like sodium selenite, the body reduces it to hydrogen selenide, that gets incorporated with ATP to make selenophosphate, which then gets incorporated into making that selenocysteine, it's going into the enzymes. And then that enzyme sequence has this insertion sequence, which is this long code that precedes a stop codon that says, this isn't a stop codon, this is insert selenium here. So this is a massive kludge. And so all the different ways of taking selenium pose limitations in this system. It was designed by, like a bad software programmer who went in and made a patch to a software system where it works, but it's so complicated that various things can throw it off. And this is a mechanism for the lethality of hemorrhagic fever viruses like Marburg virus and Ebola virus. These viruses create a selenium deficiency state by directing those selenium amino acids that are supposed to go into your selenium proteins. It directs them into an inert protein that just depletes your body of the selenium reserves. So the question comes down to, what's your selenium status? If you've got this enzyme inhibition problem running in your system, what is it doing to your selenium? And it's a big deal. You inhibit your sulfhydryl systems, yeah, you can get Alzheimer's disease and all, but if it inhibits all your selenoenzymes, you have massive oxidative stress, and it's almost guaranteed you're going to have rapid progression, early onset Alzheimer's disease. So, spending some time looking at your selenium status is, I think, a very good idea.
Yeah, how would you biohack it, Stephen, rather than test it?
I just do. I think that selenomethionine, which is the most popular selenium supplement, is the worst one that you can take.
Yeah.
Yeah. And selenocysteine is a good one because it's directly incorporatable. So you're feeding the actual transfer RNA that's putting the selenium into your selenoprotein. And then selenite is the next best one. And that's a general one that's useful because you can push it frequently. You can actually, by taking it multiple times throughout the day, like in your drinking water, allows you to take 200, 400, 600, 1,000 micrograms of selenium in a given day. So you can push it stronger than you can with selenomethionine, which is a cumulative poison, and selenocysteine, which is potentially a cumulative poison, but can also overwhelm the selenium systems in the body that are normally recognizing low levels, and having way too much may pose problems that are not yet well documented. So you can see all kinds of literature about selenomethionine diluting the methionine in your enzyme pool. So that's well documented, but selenocysteine, it doesn't get any respect. So that's the one that I favor now. And I take that once or twice a week, 200 micrograms once or twice a week. And I do selenite every day in my drinking water. So I have selenium drops. I've been giving them away to friends and family since I was in college. And half my selenium supply is still left. Yeah, and it's like 0.0002 cents a day if you buy it wholesale and make your own.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay, thanks, Mona. Okay, Kathy, you're next.
Hi, thank you, Stephen, and thank you, Aaron. Can you hear me okay?
We can, loud and clear.
Great. I have my question ready, but can I ask a quick question that I think many of us might be wondering about? And that's, how do we check our selenium status?
That's you can't feel it. So first of all, there's no I don't know, subjective way to get any kind of a handle on it. It's below the level of sensation, below the level of everything. So the only way to do it is get yourself tested. And
Would that, go ahead.
you can look at hair, you can look at red blood cells. So
I don't think you can look at hair. Hair is definitely not an accurate way to test minerals.
selenium.
So, no.
Okay.
So
red blood cells is,
yeah, that's the thing with deranged mineral transport is, like, I wouldn't rely on hair testing at all. It can give you an idea on your mineral status, but I think the best thing to do, like the way I see it, is just give your body a little bit of everything and let your body sort things out. Just listen to your body. But hair is definitely not a good way to test selenium and most other minerals, but it can give you an idea if something's high or low, and then you can go from there. But
what I do is just take it on faith. You know, that I don't bother to measure it. I mean, I've done red blood cell and selenium levels are in the upper quadrant and all, but I've been taking selenium since I was in college. So that's not surprising to me. And that may be one reason why the mercury that I played with as a kid never bothered me, is because I at some point I discovered the selenium literature and recognized that selenium was the cheapest anti-cancer therapy that existed in all of the universe.
Wow.
And so I just take selenite in my drinking water every day. I get about, I'd say, 200 micrograms of selenite spread out throughout the day. But I have taken selenite in higher doses experimentally, and I can tolerate 2 milligrams of selenium in a single dose without getting any kind of signs of hypoglycemia. That's the thing to pay attention to. If selenite kills you by inducing hypoglycemia to the point that your blood sugar crashes enough that you die. And if you do enough selenium to make yourself sick, you're just miserable because you've got hypoglycemia and your brain isn't working because of its lack of blood sugar. So if you want to try it, you can do 200 micrograms in a single glass, single dose, see if you react badly to it. If you do, back off, take less and less. A typical minimum dose would be 10 or 25 micrograms. So for me, the selenium I make is either 70 micrograms per drop, which is the dropper tips that are tapered. And then I've got also droppers that are blunt, in which case it's 100 micrograms per drop. So I put 1 drop in a glass of water, and then I take a sip. And then a couple hours later, I take a swallow. A couple hours later, I take a gulp. And then I chug the whole glass. That way you can explore your reaction to the selenium. And so if the selenite is a mild oxidizing agent, and it may be that you don't have enough reducing power in your body to handle it gracefully.
If we do feel bad after taking a tiny bit or even a bit more, does that mean that hypoglycemia was induced?
No, that
Is
would
that
be
what you said?
clear.
No.
That's a very distinct kind of symptom, and you can do a blood test with your blood glucose to verify if that is or is not happening. But typically, if your blood sugar gets down, you start to have all kinds of psychological symptoms and manifestations, and you can get shaky, and you can get sleepy, and you can pass out.
Right.
So, and you can feel like the earth is coming off of its axis, and we're all ready for gloom and doom. So there's a lot that can manifest that way, but usually I would predict that if you're reacting badly, it would be oxidative stress. And so the question would be, what happens if you were to take, let's say, vitamin C, a gram for every hour on the hour for several times, and then 2 hours after that, take your selenium then you're topping out your reducing power in your body so that it can then reduce the selenium more gracefully. Does that change your sensitivity to the selenite?
Okay. I'd heard that if we are low in selenium or selenite, then we will have a bad reaction to it. Is that correct?
I don't know.
Okay.
Aaron,
Okay.
have you ever heard that?
Possibly. So like if you're low on something, they're the things that likely will give you the most benefit, and that potentially you'll feel that the most. What I find is, so with people, I find the things that are least tolerated for people are selenium, B vitamins, copper. So like Stephen said, selenium is it's quite powerful at upregulating energy systems. So for people that have got a lot of inflammation, oxidative stress, that are very sensitive to things, selenium is one thing that easily throws people off. But you might want to try selenium cysteine, Kathy, and see how you go with that.
Okay. Okay.
What I do, and I've just written about this in my book, is so the way I recommend people to start a mineral and vitamin program is start with vitamin C, and then add vitamin A, D, K, magnesium, carnitine, and then there's I have to look at it again, molybdenum, zinc, iodine. The last things to try are selenium and B vitamins generally, but some people just can't tolerate any minerals and vitamins. Some things that I've found that really help people that are really struggling tolerate a mineral and vitamin program is Epsom salt foot baths. So you get a lot of sulfate. So sulfur is quite an abundant mineral acid, a mineral in our body that a lot of people that have got high oxidative stress are deficient in. So doing Epsom salt baths is an economical way to get sulfate, and by putting 2 or 3 cups of Epsom salts, like if you're very sensitive, start very slow with a diluted solution.
Sulfate, but not sulfite or sulfoxide or sulfide. You can't reduce sulfate into sulfide.
No, you need, sulfite needs molybdenum to be reduced into sulfate, doesn't it? So if you're deficient in molybdenum,
It's molybdenum.
molybdenum.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's one of those tongue twister words. Yeah. Yeah. But part of this is, the process of figuring out what it is that's going on in your body and how you react to these things can give you clues about how to prioritize them.
Mhm. Mhm.
Let me also suggest that when we were talking with Angela earlier, there are ways that you can get into this with biohacking as your primary modality. I'm gonna push it a little bit to say that biohacking is a way of learning to speak body language, that your body is communicating to you. It communicates to you in feelings, in pain, in happiness, and whatever. And the symptoms that you experience, that's your body using its method of communicating to you. And so it's your job to learn the body's language. It's not the body's job to learn English or whatever your chosen language is. And so the biohacking just puts the body in a loop where you probe something and you look at your body's response to see, is this a positive or negative thing? And many different ways that you can close that loop by looking at things like urine pH, which is an example of a very powerful technology that is incredibly difficult to do, because you have to test your urine every time you pee for at least a day, if not 3 days. So that's like, it intrudes on your life. You don't really have a life if every time you pee, you have to get out the pH papers and measure your urine pH. But when if you do, for example, want to look at your metabolic rate, there's a really accessible test that you can do, which is how long can you hold your breath? Very simple test. You can do it anywhere, anytime. You just take in a big breath and time yourself. And if your metabolic rate is high, you won't be able to hold your breath for 30 seconds. Unless maybe you're a swimmer or a lifeguard or something like that, or a deep sea diver. But you can standardize your breath hold time. You can learn what it is, and on average, what it is in the morning, what it is in the afternoon, what it is when you eat a vegan diet versus being in ketosis. And if your metabolism is low, you can often hold your breath for more than a minute. So this is a way that you can not only test yourself to find out constitutionally where you are, but you can also test how does a supplement or a change in diet affect your breath hold time. If it's increasing your metabolic rate, you'll be making more carbon dioxide and you won't be able to hold your breath as long. So this is a way, this kind of bracketing the whole idea of biohacking as from really complicated, technologically intense stuff to something that's just so absurdly simple that nobody gives it any respect. So I was going to suggest that Angela might want to do 3 days of urine pH testing to find out whether her urine is alkaline, which is what would normally I would predict based on her symptoms and fatigue and lack of energy and stuff, or if it's what's called a fixed acid pattern, which is chronic inflammation. Urine is acid all the time, no matter what you eat, it's always acid. That's a sign that you've got runaway inflation, chronic inflation.
I might try that as well, Stephen. This is Kathy. My two main issues is I've been trying to kind of heal for about 6 years. I tried a little bit of OSR about 3 years ago and had a tiny bit of success, but
Did you take it orally?
I did, yes.
And how big a dose did you get up to before you started noticing a negative reaction?
Probably about 30 milligrams.
Oh, okay.
But
Did you ever try it transdermally?
I did just once in the early days, but maybe I should try that again.
Well, I'm just curious to know because I've
Yeah,
had people who had bad reactions taking it orally, and it may be because their mouth is saturated with mercury from, let's say, amalgam fillings. And the
interesting.
fact that the OSR is absorbing into the tissues of the mouth and or the throat and the esophagus that are also bathed in the
Oh.
saliva from the mercury, that it could then, the mermaid could pick that mercury up and distribute it into the body rather than pulling it out of the body.
Oh, what? But it wouldn't let the mercury go, would it, once it grabbed onto it from the mouth?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's Boyd Haley's argument.
Okay. And even if we had removed all amalgams from our mouth, we could still have mercury in that area,
Yes.
just residual vapor or just hidden away in the tissues?
Well, I mean, it's the ability of tissues to handle mercury depends upon their glutathione status.
Okay.
And I often tell the story about this middle-aged woman who had idiopathic dilated cardiomyopathy, a kind of heart disease, and she died. And during the autopsy, they sampled her heart tissue and sent it off and measured a mercury level of 0.8 milligrams per kilogram of heart tissue, which is 100 times a lethal dose. And this woman was alive before she died. And so the ability of her heart tissue to handle almost 0.1% wet weight of mercury.
Wow.
That's just, it's like unbelievable that somebody could have that much mercury in their heart and still be alive.
Wow.
It goes to this question of local tissues being able to handle and manage the mercury by producing glutathione and keeping themselves reduced to whatever degree they can. And so you could have high levels in your heart and low levels in your kidney and have kidney failure because your kidney can't manage it properly. Or you could have high levels in your body and low levels in your brain and have Alzheimer's disease because your brain is behind the blood-brain barrier and it's having metabolic problems that the rest of your body doesn't. So for example, diabetes. You have diabetes, well, that impairs your body because your body uses GLUT4 receptors that are sensitive to insulin. So the insulin resistance of diabetes sabotages your body's ability to make to utilize glucose. But your brain uses GLUT1 receptors, which are pretty much immune to that kind of effect. So many people with diabetes with really sharp brains because it's their body that's taking the brunt of it. Well, mercury is like that. It can manifest, it's not evenly distributed, and we just don't know how unevenly distributed it is. We also don't know how unevenly distributed the glutathione status of different tissues are. So the mercury glutathione, it's only 10% exposure to the mercury, it's 90% about your glutathione status to manage your mercury. We're all born with enough mercury on board to cause Alzheimer's disease. The question is, can we manage it with glutathione properly? And glutathione defense depends upon selenium status. So at the bottom end of the glutathione reductase system is glutathione, thyroidoxin reductase, that has a selenium atom in it, and it doesn't work without that selenium atom. So this parallel antioxidant defense to glutathione depends upon selenium. So if the glutathione system and the selenium system are being attacked, that's a double attack on the glutathione system because it's undermining its foundation in addition to inhibiting its potency and its activity.
Wow. Would you ever recommend liposomal glutathione?
Yes, but
You would.
I would tend to recommend it primarily as a biohacking experiment to see how you react to glutathione. And same thing with liposomal vitamin C and liposomal melatonin. and or maybe intravenous glutathione. So, you know, if you get an IV glutathione, you can see your body's reaction to it. That it's a way of closing that feedback loop, and you're allowing your body to speak to you through its reaction to the glutathione. Dr. Perlmutter has done this with all kinds of people with acute glutathione problems like Parkinson's disease. And the first time you get an infusion, the patient comes back and says, "Doc, I'm born again." But the second time, it's not as good. The third time, it's not as good as that. And by the time you get out to 10 infusions, it's no longer working. So
you've redistributed so much. You've redistributed metals all over the place for a lot of people.
You could have, and you could have also just activated a homeostatic feedback loop.
I see lots and lots of people destroyed by glutathione IVs, and they're all metal toxic.
Yeah,
and then I see lots of them recover.
Yeah, the problem with liposomes is they're made with vegetable oil, vegetable lecithin, and that's a polyunsaturated fat that can go rancid. It's something that your body has to defend against. It's omega-6, so it's typically on the wrong side of the fatty acid balance question, and so I don't recommend it as a routine thing, but I can say that my medicine chest has liposomal vitamin C in it for emergencies. So if I get COVID, if and when I get COVID, I'm going to be taking liposomal vitamin C during the acute phase. And that would be true running a fever, having food poisoning, getting drunk because of a bachelor party. These are all acute things. So if I was an accountant, for example, and I was assigned to do an audit of a company that was headquartered in a sick building, I would take liposomal vitamin C when I was inside that building. But I wouldn't take it all the time. Does that make sense?
It does, yes. I have been taking it pretty often, and I think I'll stop. I'll stop doing that.
This is one of the things that is a severe problem, polyunsaturated fatty acid overdose. It's a common aspect of an inherent problem with dietary supplements that is masked by a fad. Polyunsaturated fatty acids not only are very powerful from the perspective of being what Ravisi would categorize as aerobic acidifying catabolic agents. The fatty acids are able to mimic thyroid hormone in that they can increase membrane permeability. So saturated fats are like sluggish for the membranes. That's kind of the average inhibitory influence in membranes, and cholesterol adds to that. And then the polyunsaturates make the membranes more fluid, and they create these little tiny holes that small molecules can wiggle through. And that would include, oxygen, for example, can fit through those kinds of little perforations in the membrane. And so when you consume, let's say, fish oil or borage oil or flax oil or evening primrose oil, these fatty acids dissolve into your membranes and they fluidize the membranes, and that increases the metabolic rate of your cells. So if you're hypometabolic, it's a remedy, but it's a remedy with a cost. And that is that's an oil that can go rancid. So it's now a burden to your antioxidant defense system. So the management of that is, don't use evening primrose oil or fish oil to increase your metabolic rate. Use thyroid hormone or adrenal hormones or coconut oil or acetyl-L-carnitine or B-complex vitamins, any of those kinds of nutritional mechanisms, rather than to abnormally alter your lipid membrane fluidity. And if you've been on it for a while, just realize that there's an antioxidant burden imposed, and that means you need to take more vitamin C, ascorbyl palmitate, vitamin E, and selenium that would be involved in the peroxidase enzymes in lipid membranes for keeping your membranes from peroxidizing. And minimize the fish oil and the flax oil. Take only as much as you need to resolve your inflammatory symptoms, and don't take any extra.
Have you seen anyone develop blood clots from taking fish oil? There's a guy the other day on Facebook. He's got blood clots under his arms, and I see he posted that he'd been taking a couple of tablespoons of cod liver oil for a long period of time, and that I know fish oil and cod are cardiovascular risk, but it made me wonder if it was fish oil. He did also have a mouthful of amalgams as well, and I was wondering if it was the combination of the mercury and the fish oil.
I've never seen that, but there's a lot of clotting stuff going on now because of the COVID vaccines.
Yeah,
a massive surge in clotting problems, and atypical ones that haven't happened before, and they're seeing long fibrous clots as opposed to clumping clots. So that's one of those bizarre wild cards in the game. But other than that, fish oil is a blood thinning agent, and so I wouldn't expect to see blood clots. I would expect to see people bleeding. I remember once when I cut myself shaving, and I was taking BHT, which is a blood thinner, not fish oil, vitamin E, and nattokinase, and every time I smiled that day, the cut would break open and start bleeding. Yeah. So that's what I would expect from fish oil is an inhibition of clotting effects, but that's pre-vaccination. That's pre-mRNA methylpseudouridine administration to people. So that issue of how things are changed now as opposed to more than 3 years ago is, in my opinion, still an open question. But for fish oil, it's about the stability of defending peroxidation in the fat tissues of your body. And so I take BHT on an irregular basis to keep my antioxidant defense up. So that's not a problem for me. BHT is like a vitamin E, but it isn't proviral. It's antiviral, whereas vitamin E is proviral.
Have you seen anything that helps with those clots? That breaks down those clots?
Not that's been studied.
No.
But I think the standard COVID protocol, nutritional protocol, probably works fairly well. And doing antifibrin therapy with natto or lumbrokinase or serrapeptase, that those are probably effective. They're just not being studied for that. And vitamin C is probably important for that. I mean, the issue is that for clots to form, there has to be a fibrin maturation process taking place. And natto is an enzyme that breaks down fibrin peptides. So it's...
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Do you think those clots are happening in everyone that's taken the vaccines?
No. I think it just doubles or quadruples your risk.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So in other words, the people that I know who didn't get vaccinated and had COVID, they're not showing the post-COVID syndrome stuff. If they treated it actively with vitamin C and bioflavonoids and zinc, and whether they added hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin or not, those people are doing very well with minimum risks of post-COVID syndrome, and that I think that characterizing the COVID inflammatory response is that spike protein is present in all the beta coronaviruses that cause colds. And so this has been something that it hits people, you know, every year to 3 years, you get a cold, you know, kind of a thing. And every 1 to 3 colds, it's a beta coronavirus. And that the COVID virus is like double in terms of the spike protein exposure, significantly higher exposure, and that it was engineered for a maximum effect on humans for both the CD receptor and the
ACE2 receptor,
the blood vessel wall. What is it?
ACE2.
ACE2, but
ACE2.
the CD147 or something like that. Receptor on the blood vessel wall, and therefore it has that same inflammatory effect, but it's 2 to 4 times stronger. And then when they made the vaccines, the engineers had a technology to either use pseudouridine, which makes the mRNA last 2 to 4 times longer in the body, or they could use methyl pseudouridine, which lasts 10 to 100 times longer. And they made the unfortunate choice of choosing the methyl pseudouridine. So this would guarantee that your body would produce spike protein and produce an immune system response. But what they didn't realize was that there's a negative effect of spike protein itself, and increasing that to months of exposure instead of days of exposure has this inflammatory consequence. So they made a bad judgment in guaranteeing that the body would respond. They exposed the body to excess.
I don't think it was a bad judgment. It's fairly clear that it was intentional.
I disagree.
You do?
Never, I think it's a bad policy to ever explain it by conspiracy what can be explained by simple stupidity.
I don't know. There's so much stuff that it's just too intentional.
These scientists are like kids playing with their father's .45 Magnum.
Yeah.
You know, it's just they don't have enough wisdom to know what they're doing, and they're making all kinds of decisions on the spur of the moment. And then their decisions are then manifested in a sales program and a promotional program that runs on automatic. It's just like a prescription for disaster. So it's just like all of a sudden it's very fashionable for kids to play with their father's handgun.
It's saying what they've done.
You know, teach it in schools. Here's some guns. Learn to play with your father's gun. It's so, you know, this is the problem that you have, this collateral damage to doing something that's never been done before with ingredients that have never been tested in humans, and to, you know, it's a prescription for a disaster. And you could say, well, yeah, it was intentional, but I can say I see no evidence of its intentionality. I just say it's explainable by stupidity.
Have you looked at all the Pfizer documents that have been released?
Yeah.
Well,
I haven't looked at all of them, but I've read like
some of them. I haven't looked
a
at all of them.
dozen analyses and perspectives on it, and it's very clear that Pfizer was grossly irresponsible. They knew what was going on, and they kept doing it despite clear evidence that they should stop.
Well,
so they're just equivalent to the tobacco companies.
Pfizer's lawyers don't even turn up to the court cases, though. It's the Department of Justice's lawyers that turn up to the court cases.
Sure,
so
those are their allies.
Yeah.
And when you co-opt the medical system and the public health authorities, it's strange bedfellows.
Unreal what they've done.
Yeah.
We better let more people ask questions anyway.
Well, it's like a religion, you know. The Catholics believed that the earth was the center of the universe and that everything revolved around the earth. That was their experience, and they built their theology on it. Well, modern public health people have built this religion on vaccines. And the worst crime imaginable, which is the equivalent of heresy, is to promote vaccine hesitancy.
Yeah. Rather than look at the science, look at the real life results, that doesn't matter. So again, by the end of this, I think this will be the end of vaccines.
Okay. Kathy, you're still up. Do you have a follow-up
Oh,
question?
yes. Thank you. Yeah, I'll ask quickly my main question. Thank you. So I've been trying to heal for about 6 years, and kind of whatever road I go down, whether it's taking, probiotics or prebiotics to try to heal my gut, or whether it's taking a little bit of OSR or a little bit of another kind of binder, I get extremely constipated. Extremely, everything just shuts down. And
what remedies do you use for that?
I have
Magnesium?
I have a lot of magnesium citrate. I have a couple other
Herbals?
an herbals, a couple different herbals, something from Pure Encapsulations called Motilipro.
Okay, well, I've got a couple of things to suggest.
Okay.
The smooth muscles of the gut use two different neurotransmitters.
Okay.
One of which is serotonin and the other of which is acetylcholine. Okay, so you could have an anticholinergic reaction, or you could have an induction of indoleamine dioxygenase, which is an antitryptophan enzyme in the body. Burns up your tryptophan, so you can't make serotonin from it. So my question is, does taking a cholinergic like choline or phosphatidylcholine or GPC choline or DMAE, any of those cholinergics, lecithin, does that ease your constipation risk from whatever it is that you're reacting to? And also, does taking 5-hydroxytryptophan ease that constipation reaction?
The only of those ones of those that I've tried is a little bit of phosphatidylcholine, and I can't say, I don't really remember if it helped.
Okay.
Or
You
my
may need to
constipation or
repeat
not.
your experiment with this in mind.
Sure.
There's a lot of stuff that's just ignored by the chaos of life, and that we're not paying enough attention within a certain theme. So that's why biohacking is important, because you're asking a question in advance of the trial. See.
Okay. And when I have, when that happens, when everything, my digestive system kind of shuts down, it creates extreme inflammation throughout my whole body. Deep fatigue, pain everywhere. And I feel like when I do anything.
I think that could be the 5-hydroxytryptophan, because inflammation induces the indoleamine dioxygenase enzyme, the IDO enzyme. So you become inflamed, that induces an enzyme that trashes your body's tryptophan. Typically, your tryptophan level in your blood drops by 50%, and that was verified in COVID. Both children with COVID and adults with COVID have half the level of tryptophan in their blood of people who don't. And they were both 50%, within 2 percentage points of 50%. So this is a standard inflammatory reaction. Your body wants to get rid of serotonin so that your dopamine becomes active during an infection. So that's what I would suggest, that would be what's going on with you. And let me also give you another context to this. This will be in the recording, and it may be a lot of details, but you can listen to this again to pick it up.
Okay.
Tryptophan and 5-hydroxytryptophan don't have high water solubility. So when you take them as supplements, they're absorbed over a period of time. And that time gives this indoleamine dioxygenase enzyme a chance to destroy them. So the idea is that if you can speed up the absorption, you get a higher efficacy with a lower dose. And the way to do that is with collagen protein, pre-digested collagen protein. The peptides in that protein will solubilize the tryptophan and 5-hydroxytryptophan so that it's pre-dissolved, and when you drink it, it's absorbed through your gut into your bloodstream faster. Also, tryptophan and 5-hydroxytryptophan are transported into cells and transported across the blood-brain barrier, and there's amino acid competition for tryptophan and 5-hydroxytryptophan, and the collagen protein peptides are not the ones that compete against the tryptophan.
Okay, so what you're suggesting, Stephen, is to do a trial of 5-hydroxytryptophan?
And dissolved in water with a teaspoon or 2 of collagen protein. So take a capsule of the 5-HTP, dump it into a glass bottle, you know, a cup, a pint, anywhere in there.
Okay.
Add some warm water and a teaspoon or 2 of the collagen protein, shake it up until it dissolves. And if it's from a capsule and 5-HTP, there's going to be binders and excipients in there because it's maybe 25 milligrams or something like that. And the capsule is way more than 25 milligrams. So you may not see it fully dissolve, but if you use powdered tryptophan or powdered 5-hydroxy, it'll go all the way to being clear.
Oh, okay.
And then, you know, when you're experimenting and you take something and you get constipated, take out that bottle that maybe you make it the night before, maybe you make it with warm water and it takes, you know, an hour for it to dissolve, and then take a sip of it, or a sip or a swallow, a relatively small amount, and just wait for an hour. And then if you're not reacting badly and all that, then take a gulp of it.
Oh, okay.
And then if you don't react badly to that, then chug the rest of it.
And that's one cap. Go ahead.
Yeah,
That's
so
one
that's,
cap of.
yeah, so that would be a normal capsule dose would be potentiated by this. For tryptophan, it comes in 500 milligram, sometimes more capsules. I have powdered tryptophan, so I can take it all the way to dissolved. But if you have it in capsules, 500 milligrams, that's 2 doses if it's mixed with a couple of teaspoons of collagen protein. So you can then use 1 dose and then put it in the refrigerator, and then the next day use it again. It's not stable for long-term storage, but it'll last for 24 hours.
Okay. And any type of collagen protein is okay? Does it matter what it's made from?
No, type 1, type 2, type 3, type 6, none of that matters. The amino acid profiles are pretty much the same. It matters whether it's tripeptide or hexapeptide kind of a thing, but they both dissolve the tryptophan. Tryptophan is the most difficult to dissolve. 5-hydroxytryptophan, the hydroxy group, makes it a little bit easier to dissolve. But in any case, that just means that it's absorbed very rapidly into your system. And 5-hydroxytryptophan goes down your gut and can stimulate the smooth muscles in your gut. And you can also see if this has an effect on your bowel transit time. So if you eat something like corn on the cob and you don't chew it all the way to submission, you eat beets and you have red food coloring in your system, you can see your bowel transit time. And if you stimulate those smooth muscles, it's gonna speed up the food flow through your system, and you're gonna see that coming out your bottom end.
Right.
Sooner.
Yeah, I don't think I have really any, what is it called? Peristalsis? I don't think that I have that at all. It doesn't seem to
then
exist.
that would be a natural way for you to investigate this. And if you've got chronic inflammation, keep in mind that when you have heavy metals, chronic inflammation is an expected consequence that accompanies the heavy metals. And that means that not only is the lower metabolism promoting constipation, but the lack of energy and neurotransmitters are slowing down digestion, and they're slowing down peristalsis. So all of the digestive systems are impaired on a concerted basis. So that would put you into this constipation risk factor category.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'll give that a try.
Andre, you're up. Oh, did I lose him?
Looks like it.
Okay, Rachel, you're up.
Hi there, good evening. I just wanted to go very briefly, back to the vitamin B12. If you don't have the methylation pathways functioning, how can you get around that effectively and absorb the B12, please?
Well, one way is betaine. betaine-free base is trimethylglycine. Betaine hydrochloride is an acid delivery system for your stomach. And so you can get methyl groups that bypass the methionine synthase requirement.
Thank you.
Yeah. BETAINE is how it's spelled, and it's basically just the most common amino acid, glycine, with 3 methyl groups on it. And so it's relatively benign. It's got a mostly sweet taste, so you can buy it in bulk and add it to beverages or food or soups, stock, or whatever. It's something that you can take to help, as the hydrochloride, you can take it with meals to help digestion.
So will that help you take a vitamin B12 supplement, or are you just relying on the natural form in food?
Well, if it's methyl B12 or hydroxy B12, the betaine hydrochloride will destroy it. Methyl B12 is unstable in stomach acid, and hydroxo B12, which is the oxidized form, is somewhat unstable in stomach acid. I mean, methyl B12, if you look at it cross-eyed, it breaks down. But cyanocobalamin is stable in stomach acid, which is why that's the favored B12 that you see in the marketplace, is the cyano form. It's a very much tighter bond, and most people can remove the cyanide group just fine.
Okay, because there was some scare on social media groups about taking that form, but you think it's fine to take with the betaine?
Well, cyanide is a toxin. It's present in very small quantities, like, nitric oxide is a toxin. Peroxynitrite is a toxin. Hydrogen selenide are toxins. Bleach, hydrogen or chlorine oxide, that's a natural compound made in the human body. So it's not like a small amount of cyanide is intrinsically dangerous, but it could be that if you've got, so one of the things that cyanide can do is bond to hemoglobin, and the iron on hemoglobin prevent it from carrying oxygen. So if you've got a hemoglobin problem to exist with, maybe you'd be much more sensitive to cyanide than somebody else. But cyanide is found in all kinds of foods in low quantities. And I don't know if you've ever chewed an apple seed, but you can actually taste the cyanide in an apple seed.
Sure, that's the B17, isn't it?
I'm not sure what B17 is. I know that there is also I'm blanking on it.
They call it latex or amygdalin.
Oh, Laetrile, but that's, yeah, but I think B17 is also called something else too. Yeah.
Okay, so you could take the betaine and just rely on it basically affecting you to absorb natural B12 if you're having the right foods, rather than complicating it with cyanocobalamin.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's always this issue of the quality of the B12 that you're taking, but B12 shouldn't inhibit B12 any worse than it's already inhibited. So taking B12, you can consider it a waste of money. But given that a dose of B12 is not that expensive, you're not really wasting much. So that's, in my opinion, not a great way to make a decision. And the question is, if you're trying to work on your methylation, you want to see when your B12 kicks in. So you want to see your methylmalonate disappear out of your urine organic acids test. That means that your cobalamin is reduced again. Enough of it is reduced that it's working. It's clearing that propionate from your fatty acids. This is all just a way of metabolizing fatty acids that have an odd number of carbon atoms. Most fatty acids have an even number of carbon, but every once in a while there'll be odd length, and this B12 is necessary for metabolizing those when it gets down to 3. So it goes, 8 to 6 to 4 to 2 to 0. But in odd ones, it'll go from 9 to 7 to 5 to 3. When it gets to 3, that's when the B12 kicks in.
So you're saying just take the normal B12 with the betaine and see when it starts to actually take effect?
Yeah.
Okay.
But just to see whether betaine, if you have an organic acids test, I mean, this is where you throw money at a problem instead of biohacking it, where you do a test, you submit the urine organic acid sample, and then you take betaine for 2 weeks and you submit it again.
Okay. Thank you.
That it?
Yeah, but yeah, I think so. It was
Okay.
it was a very simple way of just saying, how do you get somebody to absorb B12? Because obviously the lack of B12 is going to give neuropathy when someone's been on a vegetarian diet long term. And then the added complication of having mercury is going to also create neuropathy.
Yeah.
And so it's this ever decreasing circle. It's this vicious circle, which is difficult to get out of.
Yeah. True. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Devon, you're up.
Yes. Hi, Steve. How are you?
Good. You got
Good.
some questions? You got something exciting to talk about?
I don't know if it's exciting or more depressing, but I at the moment, I've been taking for many years psych drugs
We're taking what?
psychiatric drugs
Okay.
for a mood disorder, bipolar to be specific. And some of those drugs include a mood stabilizer, an antipsychotic, and a really bad drug called Ambien, which I'm sure you know of. And I'm wondering if that can interfere with OSR detox, because these drugs are heavy in the brain and they do many things to the brain to slow it down. Certainly all three do that. And I wonder if when the mercury bound to the OSR starts to leave the brain, if these types of drugs can impede the lymphatic system's way of naturally removing the drugs, the bound mercury rather, sorry. Because I'm very worried.
I don't know if it does or not.
Okay.
I wouldn't be surprised, but my guess is that there would be minimal interactions.
Okay, that's what Dr. Semelka, Richard Semelka, the gadolinium expert, said too. He said that it can completely take away, chelation completely destroy the efficacy of the drug, but it also can weaken the chelation effects in his experience. And my other question was, if I can remember,
Are you on lithium?
yes, I'm trying to get off lithium.
Are you on lithium carbonate or lithium orotate?
Carbonate. I'm only on 300 milligrams, a very low dose. But
Okay, well, consider replacing it with lithium orotate.
Okay, I think I'm going to do that. I thought about that. I read a lot of studies on lithium.
Just make sure you have backup, so that anybody who's in your life that you can trust to give you feedback on your bipolar swings, so that when you drop it down to, let's say, 20 or 30 milligrams of lithium orotate, which would be a 10-fold reduction, the efficiency of the lithium in getting deep into brain cells is going to be higher because of the
right
orotate vehicle, chelation vehicle.
Right. I know orotate is much more brain friendly. It gets into the neurons better, from what I've read in studies. And I'm trying to think of another question. I might not be able to think of it because I'm blanking out. But
well, you can raise your hand again if
yes,
so.
yes, yes.
And as soon as I mute you and go to somebody else, the answer will pop right back into your brain.
Okay, thank you, Steve. So in conclusion, you think you're not an expert on psych drugs and chelation, but you suspect there could be minimal interference, if any.
Right. And I would look at, I mean, I know about neurotransmitters and the GABAergic kinds of drugs and stuff, and I know that there's often Ambien is and other benzos are capable of inducing sustained alterations in receptors.
Ambien's a bad drug. I'm trying to get off of that. I'm desperately
right,
trying.
but let me suggest that you not don't beat yourself up about it, because if your GABA receptors have been permanently altered, you may be able to only drop your dose down to a certain point, and anything you go below that will then create serious problems.
You're right. I thought about that. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's about 2 hours, so this is time for everybody who's been patiently listening and silent to have that lurking question come out. Just unmute yourself.
Okay, I'll take a stab at it. So what is the most like dumbed down basic like A plus B equals C equation for chelation?
You're delivering cabs to an urban population that's not driving.
Okay, can I have a little translation on that?
Yeah, I mean, the chelation vehicles are just things that grab onto things and allow them to move.
Right.
Yeah.
So
you can say it's like, sticking a Post-it on a folder, or it's like putting a chip on your cell phone so that when you lose it, you can track it. It's like you're just certain things have mobility or don't have mobility, and chelation is one of the ways that you can provide mobility. And chelation is always present. There's massive amounts of chelating agents in natural metabolism, and so the therapy is merely changing the ratio of these things to facilitate some therapeutic benefit.
right. So Mike, let me phrase the question in a different way. So if I wanted to chelate my enormous mercury and now multiple metals from gadolinium from scans and cancer treatment, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So I mean, I had mercury toxicity before I even had cancer treatment. So my ND has me using a cream, and I even transdermally reacted to EDTA cream. And so I'm wondering, how to go about it safely for myself over the long term.
Did you talk to the doctor about the EDTA formulation that was used? Because EDTA typically doesn't produce allergic reactions, but some of the compounds that they put in with it can. I had that same issue with paracetam in kids with Down syndrome, where their parents would say, my son, my daughter can't tolerate paracetam. And I would ask them, well, what are you using? And they would say, well, I went to Mexico and I bought this liquid paracetam formula. And I say, can you read me on the label and see if it's got methylparaben and propylparaben in it? And yes, it does. And so their kids reacting to the parabens and not to the paracetam. So I said, okay, all you have to do is buy paracetam without the liquid form, mix it up in liquid form right before you give it to your child, and they won't react. And sure enough, they don't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the things to consider, is that maybe the EDTA was a formulation that had something else in it that you're reacting to.
Yeah, it's a cream. It's called Easy Tox or Easy Detox, and it's EDTA, and it's supposed to be fairly clean. So that's kind of, but you know, I mean, for me, the whole collagen thing, because I have the Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, you know, that's always an issue. You know, if I have a reaction, it's always going to show up in my skin.
Well,
So,
yes, but many reactions to allergens in your skin do not react in your gut. So, for example, I have capsules of poison oak that I eat in the
Mhm.
spring.
Mhm.
So I get horrible reactions to poison oak, but if I swallow a capsule with poison oak in it,
Mhm.
not only do I not react, I become immune to poison oak for the rest of the summer.
Mhm. So is
So
that
there-
just straight? My daughter has, I'm asking you because you know what? We have crazy histamine issues in my family, like my daughter, my son, and myself. And, you know, I know that because of the Ehlers-Danlos for me, and then, you know, hypermobility spectrum disorders, you know, come with a myriad of different issues. So when you were talking about constipation and that, it's sort of like, you know, and the SIBO, I mean, it's really interesting how there's associated loops for me on these different conversations. But the poison oak, when you swallow it, is it a homeopath or is it like?
No, I take poison oak leaves and I pluck them with tweezers. I put them into a mortar and pestle and grind it up with some clay or some sand or something like that. And then I spoon it into capsules. So I'm eating the equivalent of an entire poison oak leaf.
You're shitting me.
So
You
the
crack
key
me up.
though is that you not only have to worry about it going down, you can't get any on your lips and, you know, or you'll react, but you also can't handle it if it's on the other end. You don't want to get poison oak of the asshole. And so the idea is that when you mix it up, you want to grind it into a paste with something that's a dispersing agent, so it totally blends into your gut contents. So when it comes out, it's not concentrated enough to cause a reaction. So that's why I grind it up with something. So it's only like 10% poison oak leaf and 90% clay and sand and what else did I use? Some kind of mineral powder. It doesn't matter. You just want to crush the leaves into oblivion so that it's infinitely dispersed.
Mhm. Okay.
But this is because 90% of your immune system is operating at your gut barrier.
Right.
Your immune system is there not only to recognize antigens that are nasty, it's there to recognize food antigens that aren't nasty and turn off the immune system reaction to it.
Mhm.
Whereas your skin, it's presumed that nothing coming through your skin is good.
Okay.
But I wouldn't start with EDTA. Have you tried OSR?
I haven't because you know what, I don't know how to get a hold of it. So, you know, I've heard Steve talk about it on several occasions, but you know, I just, you know, it's all foreign.
Well, the advantage of OSR is that it has a sulfur basis for its selectivity. And so you're going after the things that are the most toxic, and that's mercury.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
to say to some extent a little bit less, there's a couple of other heavy metals and cadmium that are in that same kind of sulfur-phile minerals that just like to bond to sulfur. And so because the mineralopathy effect is that it takes out your sulfur and it takes out your selenium, having a chelating agent that's restoring the sulfur and selenium is strategically apt.
Mhm. Okay.
You start with what you got to do is you got to try and get yourself in a place where you're comfortable to try it. So it's about reducing inflammation. So if you're reacted to EDTA like that, it may be to do with metals as well. So you might be thiol intolerant, not something. So I don't know if you know about thiols. So there's so thiols would be something to consider. So if you're not really sure if you're thiol intolerant or not, what you do is you just eat a low thiol diet for a couple of days and monitor your blood pressure and pulse rate before and after, so you get a baseline of your pulse rate and blood pressure. And then if you load up on thiols and your blood pressure or pulse rate spikes more than what it would normally spike eating normally, gives you an idea that your immune system is reacting to thiols. So just
N-acetylcysteine would be a good choice for that. It's readily available in the States.
What's that, Steve?
I said N-acetylcysteine is a good thiol. to try. It's
N-acetyl,
readily
yeah.
available in the States.
But
Yeah,
if you
I've
really
taken it, you know, I've taken N-acetylcysteine in the past, but you know, I have to be, you know, careful of what I take, you know, because I'm still, you know, I what, 6 months post-treatment. And you know, there's questions about the use of both NAC and glutathione in cancer patients. So, you know, round and round and round you go. And I know that I'm metal toxic. I was metal toxic before I was even diagnosed with cancer. And so it becomes, and it was both mercury and cadmium that I had high levels of. So, you know, and that was
Fumaramide is your chelator of choice for mercury and cadmium.
And so where do you get a hold of it? How do you get a hold of it? I didn't think you could even get a hold of it in the States.
Are you in the mercury chelation group?
No.
On Facebook?
Okay. So if you join the what's called mercury heavy metal chelation now, but if you join on Facebook, if you join the mercury heavy metal chelation group, there's a Chinese company that manufacture it as a research chemical. So you've got to buy it as a research chemical. Now, what you'd have to be careful of is with cancer. So anything that downregulates. So if your immune system's keeping cancer in check now, anything that downregulates metabolism will make cancer more opportunistic. So it's the same for you with EDS. So your EDS is a good indicator on how you're doing. So if your EDS is getting worse, it's because you're increasing inflammation in your body. So a lot of the time EDS has to do with the tone of your nervous system. So adrenal glands drive the tone, have a lot to do with driving the tone of our nervous system, which drives our neuromuscular system, and that keeps it maintains a certain tension in our muscles. So as you sorry?
ADS?
Yeah, EDS, yeah. Ehlers-Danlos
Ehlers-Danlos syndrome.
EDS, okay.
EDS, yeah, EDS.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for obtaining imuramide, is there any way to obtain it that doesn't involve joining a Facebook group?
Yeah, you can. If you look up a company called Fandachem.
F-A-N-D-A.
Sorry,
Yeah.
can you spell it? Sorry.
F-A-N-D-A-C-H-E-M.
Yeah. So you can just email them and buy it, and they'll send it out.
And do not ask them any questions about it, because they're selling it for research use only, and you'd never ask. If you're buying it for research purposes, you would never ask what the dose is or how to take it or something like that. So you're just buying it for research purposes only. Don't tell them anything about what you're doing with it.
And it is a good idea for you to join a Facebook group so you understand the reactions people to. Well, you know, you sit there in the background and just watch and just see what people report, and that way it gives you more confidence in what you're doing. So you're gonna struggle to get a doctor to be able to help you with it.
Thanks.
And you know, so if you're sensitive to thiols, eating thiols will drive up inflammation. If you're eating grains and things like that, so grains, processed foods, sugars, they're all very inflammatory. So
Right. No, I'm on a keto diet. So I've been on a keto diet I do the metabolic approach. And so, yeah, I haven't eaten grains or any of that for many a moon. So yeah, no, the diet stuff, I'm on deuterium depleted water, you know, but I will say, I think actually, I went away. I went out of state for cancer treatment because I did metronomic chemotherapy at a clinic in Washington. And when I actually came home, my inflammation got worse. And I think I'm actually mold exposed in my home. And I think that that's driving up my inflammation because I'm having more symptoms here at home than I was in Washington during treatment.
Yeah.
So
That's a hard thing to biohack when you're
Yeah.
living in an environment like that. And
Yep.
you can do things like put a HEPA air filter in your house and then another one in your bedroom so that wherever you're sleeping is the cleanest air possible.
that's actually what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But the other alternative is to buy a relatively fresh tent and set it up in your backyard and spend some time out
You
in
know
the
what, Steve,
tent.
don't even laugh. And you know what? We bought a trailer and like went up to Washington and lived in the trailer. And I still have that damn thing parked out in my lot in the back. And I'm thinking about doing a test drive, like spending a week out there sleeping to see if it's making a difference. So then I'll absolutely know, because I definitely think that that's what's going on. So
The more hypometabolic you become, the more sensitive you become to mold. So
mhm.
mold's everywhere in our environment. We can't get rid of it. But so what you can do, so if you've got the money, if you have an air conditioning system in your home, but you never want to run it on cooling ever. You only want to ever run it on heating.
Mhm.
And the other good thing is, I don't know if you've an internal vacuum system. So if you keep on top of your vacuuming and the dust and stuff in your house, there's a lot of
Mhm.
allergens in our house.
Mhm.
And an internal vacuum system vented to the outside can make a huge difference to immune reactions and inflammation. But they're more, and that's, so you'll live, a lot of people, well, you'll have the same people living in a house. 3 people will be fine. 1 person will be sick with mold, and that's because they've got underlying metabolic issues.
Mhm.
There's also another possibility if you're living with other adults is that somebody might drop a dryer sheet into your dryer.
No, we don't do that.
Yeah, the other thing you can do is if you can't afford to remodel your entire house is to plan your vacuuming on a day when you can open up the windows and put a couple of box fans
Mhm.
in one of the hallways or something that connects to open windows so that you get airflow through the house and vacuum from one end to the other so that the air that comes out of the vacuum cleaner is always downwind of you and going out the far window.
Yeah, I even have a HEPA. So because my son has like profound allergies to both mold and dust mites, we have HEPA vacuuming vacuums and all of that hard surface flooring for the most part, X, Y, and Z. But yeah, it is it's a huge problem and a huge amount of work actually to keep up on it. So
it is. I suffered from long life asthma and allergies all my life, and it was all from mercury for me. And just chelating the mercury out and optimizing my, well, no, I don't eat a perfect diet, but eating well 90% of the time and a mineral and vitamin program to support my biochemistry has resolved all my asthma and allergies. On top of, I've done a lot of heavy metal chelation with OSR. So I've taken about 700 grams of OSR now, as well as chelating for a couple of years with another protocol called the Andy Cutler protocol.
Yeah.
And so it's a long process. Like if it's something that you're going to be doing for years, you just got to think of it, just get yourself functional and carry on with chelating and live your life.
Yep. Okay.
Okay.
Well, thanks for the input, guys.
Okay, so I guess
Okay,
my call for other posters has worked. Devon, did you come up with your question that you forgot?
Yes, I did, Steve.
All right.
I'm wondering if OSR truly has an irreversible bond to not just mercury, but to the other metals it claims, Mermed claims it bonds to, like arsenic and was it that gadolinium they say it bonds to, but There's been various claims about that. And if it's selective to mercury first, or if it's indiscriminate, because
The
David
studies
Kennedy,
haven't been done. If,
I'm
if
sorry?
Boyd Haley did those studies, he's not posting the results. It does have a very strong bond to mercury, but he's not rated it with respect to all the other ions. And the bioavailability of those ions to the diffusing amerimide makes a big difference. So I don't know that even if it has a preference for mercury, that it would necessarily result in mercury coming out first, because there are all these competitive effects between toxics. And
Right.
I've seen people go through years of chelation where first one metal comes out, and then another metal comes out, and then another metal comes out. And I don't understand the reasons why they're prioritized like that.
I don't either, and but you don't suppose there's an irreversible bond to all of the metals. I mean, they make a lot of claims that sometimes don't sound like true. For instance, the claim that you can take a bunch of grams, maybe, I don't remember the figure, between 7 grams or maybe even as low as 3 grams, and all your mercury will be out. This is what, I won't say the person's name, but this is what someone at the company told me. And then
That's only true of your kidney.
yeah. Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah, Boyd did that experiment with animals where he was injecting them with mercury, and he gave them an injection of amerimide, and you know, the animals that were autopsied prior to the amerimide had loads of mercury in their kidney, and then the ones afterwards had none.
Okay, that's interesting. That's actually kind of exciting, because your kidneys are so important. At least maybe I have a lot of mercury removed from my kidneys, but it's not been the case with me with my brain. I feel like I've been taking, well, I have terrible reactions to OSR anyways, but even when I have a quote unquote better reaction, it doesn't feel like it's an irreversible bond to something. It feels like if it's doing that to mercury, great, but it's picking stuff up and dropping other metals off, is my speculation, because otherwise I wouldn't be feeling such atrocious symptoms.
Yeah, well, Boyd said that it's the evidence that he cited for the irreversibility is that he put it in with EDTA and got 0 transfer.
I see. That's exciting now.
Yeah, so even if it's not irreversible, if there's some limited exchange taking place, it's not going to be major. And the main problem with mercury is that it's always bound to sulfur somewhere. If it's not bound to selenium, it's bound to sulfur. It doesn't bind to acid groups, it doesn't bind to amines, it doesn't bind to alcohols, it doesn't bind to any groups but the reduced sulfur and reduced selenium. And it's 99.99% bound to sulfur atoms somewhere, but it does move. So when the sulfur atom bumps into it here and bumps into it there, it can have 2 different sulfur atoms on it. It can kick one of them off. A new sulfur atom can bond to it. It can switch from sulfur group to sulfur group. But with amerimide, there's 2. So even if one sulfur gets kicked off briefly because the molecule vibrated the wrong way, it's still floating around where it can reattach.
That's my understanding of it too. It's just that I get these atrocious symptoms in my head, like my head's about to explode when I take OSR, especially in mold. When I was chelating in mold, I know that's no. When I got out of mold, and I'm fairly sure there's very little, if any, mold in my new apartment, I still get atrocious brain symptoms with OSR, but not as bad. Mm-hmm. So it might not be the irreversibility aspect. There might be something else going on with how my particular brain reacts to OSR, picking up the heavy metals, that I just don't know. I'm clueless.
Yeah, well, there's all kinds of subtleties to this that we don't understand yet, and as long as it remains a 0 priority for the federal government, we know our tax dollars are going for the wrong purposes.
Yeah, I agree with you, Steve.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Janina, you're back.
Yes. I want to begin to chelate transdermal, and for a beginner, how to do the mix with oil and
You can do oil and you can do DMSO.
MCT oil is okay? Or
Well, if the oil doesn't irritate your skin, it's fine.
any oil? Huh?
Yeah, I mean, it probably coconut oil is a good one to use because it's got some lower molecular weight compounds in it. So that would be fine, but I think you could use olive oil if you wanted to. You
Mhm.
could use lard if you wanted to. And it may be an advantage to have saturated fat.
And there is a proportion for mixing. Should I take a toothpick, let's say, of OSR and mix
Whatever,
it and
whatever dissolves. Now, one of the problems with OSR is that it's expensive. And therefore you want to optimize its absorption. So what you might want to do is use DMSO to get better transdermal passage. Now, being in Romania, I have no idea how DMSO is available. Here in the States, we can buy it on Amazon, you know.
It is.
So,
This would be my next question if I would use DMS. Yeah.
so the issue with DMSO is that it's even though aminamide is highly soluble in pure DMSO, it's only moderately soluble in water DMSO mixture. So you may want to apply it to get the best bang for the buck, use 70% DMSO in water, and then after you've applied the DMSO aminamide mixture, put some fresh DMSO on top of it.
Mhm. Okay.
Drive it again and move it around.
If you're functional, so if you're working and you're functional, just get a toothpick, wet it with a bit of water and dip it into the powder and just put it in your mouth and take it and try it. Like if you're really, really sick, get a clear dropper bottle, 3/4 fill it full of olive oil and put some OSR in it, and then shake it so you can see the OSR in suspension of the oil. It doesn't dissolve in oil. And then start with a couple of drops or one drop. Either you can start with it, like it still does absorb transdermally if you rub it in. It won't absorb like Stephen, like if you want to absorb it into your skin, DMSO is the better way to do it. The problem with DMSO, a lot of people are sick with DMSO, DMSO will make them sick. I got my wife to put DMSO on my back. I dissolved about 1 gram of OSR and the DMSO made her sick. She was sick for 2 days from the DMSO, just with the smell of the DMSO.
Oh yeah, but it shouldn't make you sick. I mean, it makes you stink, but it shouldn't make you sick.
she felt sick for 2 days. She wouldn't do it again.
Okay. Well, most of the people that I know who use DMSO, the only complaint they have is bad breath.
Yeah.
I don't have an issue with it. It's okay.
Yeah. Well, if you do have a significant other, you can always have them do the DMSO. So it's like, you know, if both of you eat garlic for dinner, then it's not a problem for either of you.
I'm safe. It's okay. I'm safe with this. I don't have.
The only reason to avoid oral use is if you react badly.
Mhm.
You know, so if you take you know, 5 or 10 milligrams of aminamide orally and you don't react badly, and then you go, you know, 50 milligrams, and then you go, you know, 300 milligrams, and you're not reacting badly, that's fine. That's what, you know, Boyd Haley would promote as a general medication for use for detox. But if you do react badly, then the question is there a better way to do it? And, you know, DMSO and oil on your skin, or aminamide and oil on your skin, maybe the sole of the foot or the palm of the hand. Those are very porous tissues, and the palm of the hand is a food sampling tissue. So things will absorb through the palm of the hand better than most skin areas.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, so if you grab some food what do you do before you eat it? Well, you hold it in your hand. And so if it's rancid, or if it's got something wrong with it, it's not edible, then your hand has a chance to react before you actually put it in your mouth. But if you do react badly to oral use, it could be because it's oral, and it could be because the mouth is right next to the head, and it may be that you're having the amaramide doing something in your brain that you don't want to do, and it's better to do it on a distal tissue like your palm of your hand or the sole of your foot or your ankle.
Of a muscle activation flare, I'm afraid, because I had problem with this in the past. I'm more stable now, but I don't want to risk. It was awful.
Well, if you're working Monday through Friday, you could do it Friday night or Saturday morning. And so if you do have a bad reaction, you're back in shape by Sunday.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Brandy.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Steve. Hi, Aaron.
Hi, Brandy. How are you?
Good. Well, I'm all right. How are you? Yeah, so I just have a question. I have kind of weird reactions to most things, a little different than most people. And I think, Aaron, we've kind of talked about this, but I have a lot of gut issues too. And that's like a big issue for me. And I've tried literally everything to kind of resolve that, and nothing really resolves it. Although I've noticed that there's a lot of similar reactions to like chelation, OSR, even like vitamin C, any type of like parasite cleanse. They all kind of are the same reaction in my gut. They kind of stop my gut completely. And no amount of supportive supplement helps. I could take as much magnesium as I want, or even do like enemas or whatever, and it doesn't touch it. So I guess my question mainly is, with vitamin C, that's kind of my biggest thing. I don't have the ability to take vitamin C. I haven't been able to take it at all because it also stops my gut. So is that something that you guys have seen? Any ideas on why vitamin C would have such a strong reaction, or why I would see such a strong reaction from vitamin C?
The people that I see struggle with vitamin C have got hypometabolism. So they've all got underlying metabolic issues. And the vitamin C just doesn't recycle, and it converts to oxalates. And then I think you just got to listen to your body. But I know we've talked about this before, but I would really look at everything you're doing. I would start with a hair test again to get an idea on how your body's working. So how much OSR have you taken now, Brandy?
Oh, I stopped counting. I don't know. It's not a whole lot. I mean, I can tolerate more of the actual, the one from Boyd. I can tolerate that a lot more, but I get to that point where I can take like 300 milligrams or even 600 milligrams, and I don't have significant symptoms from them. The only problem is it stops my gut. I would keep taking it every day if it didn't stop my gut.
Yeah. And that's probably, like, OSR is definitely constipating. That is a big problem with OSR. So for me, like, if I take 200 milligrams of magnesium morning and night with maybe 4 to 6 grams of vitamin C a day. If I don't keep that up while I'm on OSR, I will get constipated. But for you, so you will find that OSR is pulling metals. Pulling metals increases inflammation. So as inflammation goes up, metabolism goes down. And then you end up with constipation. Obviously one of your biggest symptoms is constipation. Mm-hmm. You could, digestive enzymes will help to support your gut. You could look at butyrate. Diet is huge for your gut, not to feed the wrong bacteria in your gut. So, starches, processed sugar or processed food, sugars, yeast, feed, not yeast, sorry, fruit feed yeast.
Mhm.
So if you're feeding yeast, that's another inflammatory factor and another anti-metabolic factor in your body. So to treat yeast, you have to be more high fat, low carb, animal proteins, and then the yeast will starve off and it will cause die-off. So that die-off can potentially make you feel horrible for 2 to 4 weeks. And at the same time, while you're adjusting your diet, that's where you see if you can hit the yeast with unilic acid. So unilic acid, so just starting slow and building up to as many as 10, 3 times a day.
Yeah.
And that, so if you can get on top of the yeast, that's another thing that reduces inflammation in your body and helps to improve metabolism. But one thing is if for some people, increased metabolism causes cell stress because you've got too many bottlenecks in your metabolism. So it might be that you've got heavy metals that are blocking normal cellular processes working properly, and then increased metabolism can end up forcing metabolism and causing cell stress and unwanted symptoms. So, and you might notice that with your cycle. So, in the estrogen phase of your cycle up to day 12, you might feel better. And then in the progesterone phase at day 21, where your cycle peaks, so progesterone has an acidifying effect at a cellular level. So your body temperature is about 0.5 degree lower when estrogen peaks at day 12. And then as progesterone kicks in around day 21, your body temperature will be about 0.5 degree higher. So do you feel better towards the end of towards your menstrual cycle where progesterone's at your highest, or do you feel worse?
I don't feel any different with my cycle. My cycle actually gets really messed up overall, which is it's not consistent anymore. But no, I don't feel any different. The only thing I've noticed that really affects how I feel mostly is like moon cycles, like new moon or like a full moon, or if I take like ivermectin, I feel better. And I notice that my gut does kind of the same thing with ivermectin too. It's not just vitamin C. It also happens with like other immune, like elderberry and other like immune supportives. They kind of cause the same thing. So it's just strange to me. I think it does turn to oxalates in my system though with vitamin C, but not being able to do vitamin C is kind of rough on me. I'm trying to like support with antioxidants, but I can't really take OSR. I can't take vitamin C. So that's been a bit of a struggle. So I've tried everything with diet and everything else. So I'm kind of like, well, what gives?
Yeah, it can be really hard. And so low dose ivermectin, I think this is, and I can't prove this, but I get the feeling it works by, so ivermectin, it's a Nobel winning anti-parasite, but when you look at where it came from, it's a natural compound that got derived from a soil bacteria on a golf course. So the professor that developed it, he noticed nothing would grow around the soil bacteria, and he took that back to his lab, and that's where he developed ivermectin. So I think ivermectin works in multiple ways that we don't even know about. So it's an anti-parasite, it's an antiviral. I think it seems effective for yeast, candida. It's a well-known cancer treatment. So I don't know, it probably works well on bacteria as well. And it reduces inflammation in the body. So when the more hypermetabolic a person becomes, the more their pathogen load increases. So we're all loaded with pathogens the whole time. And
they're also opportunistic, and therefore the more your metabolism crashes, the more they bloom.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the other aspect I would suggest is that you start adding some other modalities like body temperature measurements or urine pH patterns to see whether or not those phases that you go into in response to taking vitamin C or taking aminamide are associated with other physiological changes that you're not able to observe without the metric.
Yeah, I've done that in the past, and it definitely does make a difference. My body temp goes up, my heart rate goes up, my
And does your
body, my blood pressure.
gut
goes up.
temperature go up?
Does my what now?
Does your gut temperature go up? Is it specific to your gut? Are you having inflammation in the gut that's not
Yes.
reflected in your mouth or your forehead temperature
Yes.
or your foot temperature?
Yes, very much so. My gut burns as this happens. Even with OSR, it doesn't matter if it's vitamin C, it burns.
Well, I'd be interested if you could try the charcoal zinc product that I mentioned earlier. But you have to be very careful about the constipation issue because charcoal is a known constipating agent.
I take activated charcoal for binding already. So if it's I do okay with that. It doesn't seem to add to the problem.
Yeah, well, if you're only taking a gram, it's one thing. If you're taking a heaping tablespoon.
Oh, is it like, okay. Well, yeah, I'm taking about a gram each time. I take it about 3 times a day, but.
Okay, I'd also like to check in with Andre.
One other thing, Brandy could try is you could play around with T3 again. So you could see if you could increase metabolism with T3 and then see if you could get vitamin C working for you. So, you know, if you increase metabolism with T3 and then got vitamin C on board, you might overcome vitamin C converting to oxalates, maybe.
Yeah. I did try that before when I was on it still, but it didn't. But I will try what you recommended, Steve, and I'll see how that goes and try to see if I can get vitamin C on board at some point. I thank you so much. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Steve. I really appreciate it.
Okay. Last question or comment with Andre, if you remember what your question was. I think
do
we
remember,
lost you earlier.
Yeah, I was just speaking on mute. Thank you so much. So, brief preface to my question. Melatonin has been researched for its detox properties. At a higher doses, it can induce interesting detox effects. So my question is pretty simple. You know, how can we actually utilize melatonin in higher doses to actually detox not only mercury, but everything that is actually cramming inside the cell, specifically inside the mitochondria? What would a protocol look like?
It's not a general detox agent. It's a mitochondrial and stabilizer and enhancer. And since mitochondria are part of the toxins that are produced on a cellular basis, the more you can contain the free radical stress in the mitochondria within it, keep it in the mitochondria, the less collateral effects it has on the cell in which the mitochondria reside. So it may look like detox, it may feel like detox, but it's really antioxidant.
Seems to make a lot of people worse too. I don't know the mechanism, but a lot of people get worse with melatonin.
Okay.
So I have a quick question, Steve. Just about the vitamin C and the young lady's inability to tolerate vitamin C. I wonder, do you think that there is a difference if you're using a food-based vitamin C versus a vitamin C that is just like a chemical, like just regular ascorbic acid? Do you think that makes a difference?
I'm sure there is. I mean, I know that ascorbic acid is racemic as a chemical, and that natural ascorbic acid has a handedness to it. It may make a difference, but in terms of its antioxidant function as a molecule, it's the same.
Okay.
So the issue would be, you know, if it's oxidized or not. So for example, what is it? The ester C is a mixture of oxidized and reduced vitamin C. And the oxidized form of vitamin C has an advantage in fitting the glucose receptor and being transported into immune system cells. So there may be advantages to having your vitamin C be partially oxidized, and the process of extracting vitamin C from a food is got to be a bit on the complicated side in terms of protecting it from oxygen and oxidation. So that may be an issue, but you can create oxidized vitamin C just by mixing vitamin C in water and just letting it sit for a couple hours.
Okay.
You can also test this out with the oxidizing effect of vitamin C if you have some methylene blue on hand. When vitamin C is oxidized, it will not turn methylene blue colorless. Whereas if it's in its reduced form, it will make the blue color disappear.
So I actually do have some methylene blue, and I'm wondering,
So
do
you can actually see how your vitamin C oxidizes exposed to the air. If you take some methylene blue and you add some vitamin C to it, it goes clear, and you just leave it sit there, eventually it'll turn blue. And so you can see how long does it take to go back to blue again.
Mhm. So what's your favorite source of methylene blue, just out of curiosity? Do you use it?
I use the standard fish methylene blue, which has a heavy metal burden, and I put EDTA in it to chelate the heavy metals.
Okay.
And I don't take very much of it too.
Yeah.
But it is interesting to have green urine. And if you want to do a Star Trek skit or something, you know, using methylene blue as Romulan ale might give you some credibility points.
Hey, Stephen, have you got any ideas why melatonin causes adrenal stress for some people? I know we've talked about this before. I just couldn't remember what the answer you gave. You did give me an answer. I just can't remember what it was.
I don't know of an effect.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I know that there's an oxidation pathway for it, but you know, the doses that are being used now of 50 and 500 milligrams is way beyond any neuroendocrine signaling concentration. So you're basically flooding the mitochondria with melatonin, and that may inhibit various free radical processes, just like BHT inhibits energy systems, vitamin E inhibits mitochondrial function. All these antioxidants have the capacity of interfering with normal biological use of free radicals.
Yeah, we need some inflammation to stay healthy, eh?
Well, I don't even know if it would be inflammation. I mean, inflammation is a reaction to an excess of free radicals. So our body is built to operate in the steady state of having this low level free radical noise in the system, and that everything else is pinned to that level. And it's when that suddenly changes and that goes beyond the homeostatic capacity of the organism that the free radicals create chronic inflammation that persists. Wow, nice marathon session, guys, gals. Okay, I'll post this and send out links to access it and to where it's posted. And if anybody else wants to post it, you'll have the access to the raw file. And I also have the Q&A session here, which I will also review and edit.
Right, thanks a lot, everyone.
Okay.
Thanks, Steve. See you later.
Thanks
so much.
for you know, the wee hours of the morning in Romania. Good job. Take care, everybody.
Okay, see you guys.
Thank you.